So I have a really wonderful next guest, the former National Director of Human Trafficking Programs at the U.S. Department of Justice, Bill Wolf.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. Is the microphone working? Can you hear? No. Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah, bueno. It's a pleasure to be here with you all to talk about a very important topic, and that is really where do we all play a role in this fight to human trafficking, right?
Es un privilegio estar con todos para un tema muy importante y es este. ¿Cuál es nuestra función en este gran desafío del tráfico de personas?
The reality is that so many of us don't realize that trafficking is happening. I started my career as a police officer many years ago. I was a gang detective, not too far from where we are right here now. And it was in working, you heard earlier from a colleague, Tina, about MS-13 being heavily involved in human trafficking. It was in working a gang case that I first encountered my human trafficking.
Todos nos entramos a este tema de alguna manera. En el caso mío, yo trabajaba en esta ciudad, yo crecí en esta ciudad y dentro de mis responsabilidades iniciales, yo pude investigar a través de una pandilla, varios hablaron de la pandilla MS-13, a través de un caso de una pandilla, yo me enteré del desafío de trata.
I was tasked with interdicting this particular clique of MS-13.
Mi tema era cómo infiltrar al MS-13.
And since I couldn't really go undercover into the gang, we had to recruit an informant.
Tuve que reclutar un informante.
And we asked the informant to tell us what kind of crimes they were involved in and how they were making their money. And so oftentimes in these cases, we come to them with these preconceived notions.
Entonces yo a este infiltrante le pregunté qué tipo de crímenes estás involucrado y cuánto dinero ganas. Y cuando hacemos preguntas así, a veces llegamos con unas presuposiciones y eso es lo que yo aprendí.
And so, of course, we were looking for things like drug trafficking or firearms trafficking. We were looking for violent crimes. And so when the informant called one night and said that he was driving these girls around that he described as being involved in commercial sex, we really didn't know what he was talking about.
Entonces nosotros suponíamos que nos iba a responder que estaba involucrado en el tráfico de drogas, diferentes cosas ilegales. Pero un día nos llamó el informante en la noche y nos dijo que estaba en un carro grande y estaba transportando a niñas y esto abrió otra situación que no esperaba.
And so he called one night and he said, the girl they have me driving around tonight looks really young. I'm not comfortable. So my partner and I went out, we did our due diligence, we interdicted the situation, and sure enough, it was a 16-year-old girl.
Y cuando él me llamó, me dijo, esta niña que está en mi carro es joven, muy jovencita. Y cuando nosotros, cumpliendo nuestra función, decidimos intervenir, nos dimos cuenta que esta niña tenía 16 años.
We still didn't know what exactly we were dealing with, and so we went to the prosecutor's office the next morning. We explained what the situation was, and the prosecutor looked at myself and my partner and said, "You have a great human trafficking case." And we looked at each other and said, "What the heck is human trafficking?"
Y fue así que cuando nosotros agarramos y le ayudamos a esta niña, le entregamos y el fiscal estuvo viendo el caso, dijo, qué bueno, ustedes tienen aquí un caso de tráfico de personas. Y yo le pregunté, ¿qué es tráfico de personas?
That one case changed the entire course of my career.
Ese caso cambió toda mi carrera.
I went on to lead a regional task force where we were able to identify and help over 200 young men and women escape exploitation.
Eso nos llevó a liderar una comisión donde descubrimos de 200 niños y niñas que sufrían explotación sexual.
And bring almost 100 traffickers to justice.
Y 100 traficantes fueron llevados a la justicia.
But what I hope you take away most from that story is that even as a trained police officer,
Pero lo que yo quiero que entiendan de esta historia es que aún como policía entrenado,
I didn't know what I was looking at the first time that I encountered human trafficking.
no supe qué era el tráfico de personas cuando lo enfrenté por primera vez.
And so what I hope you all take away from today is a motivation to go learn more, to understand how to identify it, either as professionals or just members of your community.
Entonces, yo quisiera que de esta reunión usted regrese motivado para conocer más, para saber de qué manera usted puede ser una solución a lo que está ocurriendo en sus comunidades.
Because the reality is there is not one sector that is going to solve human trafficking.
Porque la realidad es que ningún sector solo va a resolver el tráfico de personas.
This is not just for the police to solve. This is not just for victim services to solve. It's not just for parents or other individuals to solve. It's for all of us.
Esto no es un caso solo para servicios especiales, solo para la policía, servicios familiares, para nosotros como padres de familia. Esto es algo que se resuelve todos colaborando juntos a favor de esta causa.
I was privileged to go on to work at the U.S. Department of Justice coordinating national programs to combat human trafficking, and later served at the White House and shepherded in the first ever national action plan to combat human trafficking.
Después de eso, tuve el privilegio de servir en el Departamento de Justicia ya a nivel nacional, donde tuve la oportunidad de ser el primer plan nacional contra la trata de personas.
And that plan was based around what we call here in the United States the 3 Ps, which are prevention, prosecution, and protection.
Y ese plan estuvo basado en 3 P's que ya les escuchamos la primera vez: prevención, perseguir, perseguir y también protección.
So we absolutely have to provide relevant services for survivors of human trafficking to help them on that path to rehabilitation and reintegration into the community.
La verdad es que tenemos que proveer servicios básicos para la gente que es víctima de trata, porque el camino hacia la restauración requiere eso de ellos y de nosotros.
We have to make sure our law enforcement and our prosecutors have the tools and resources that they need to effectively prosecute these cases and investigate them from a victim-centered, trauma-informed perspective.
Es muy importante que nosotros tengamos que nuestros policías y fiscales tengan todas las herramientas que ellos requieren para así hacer un programa que esté basado en el trauma que las víctimas de tráfico viven, que tome eso en cuenta para resolver sus situaciones.
But all too often, we forget about prevention, and we have to remember that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Hay un dicho que una onza de prevención vale una libra de cura. Entonces debemos recordar que en adición a seguir estos pasos cuando ya ocurre, la prevención es donde quien sabe más podemos invertir para parar este trauma.
And prevention starts with all of you here today.
Prevención inicia con todos los que están aquí esta mañana.
You've heard from legislators, you've heard from leaders in the space, you've heard from survivors today. Your job is to now take and advocate for change, to advocate for new laws, to advocate for policies, and to advocate for communities to stand up.
Entonces, al estar aquí, todos hemos escuchado de líderes de gobierno, líderes de ONG, de personas involucradas. Ahora requiere de todos nosotros regresar, salir de este lugar y ser un aliado cuando nuevas leyes se van a pasar, ser un aliado cuando políticas públicas se van a definir. Esté en el proceso. Seremos aliados para transformar la trata de personas.
As I work around the globe today with many different organizations fighting human trafficking, one thing is clear: when the community stands up together, we are effective in combating human trafficking.
A la hora ver este trabajo a nivel nacional y a nivel global, es algo que sobresale en todas las instancias locales y globales, que cuando una comunidad se une, puede impactar el trauma del tráfico de personas.
So I'll leave you with this. Many years ago, when my oldest son was just 9 years old,
Y les dejo con esto. Hace varios años, cuando mi hijo mayor tuvo 9 años,
I was a
¿verdad?
detective working human trafficking cases and spent a lot of time on the phone talking about cases and organizing investigations.
Yo fui un detective enfocado en casos de tráfico sexual y invertí mucho mi tiempo hablando en teléfono de las realidades y las estrategias de qué hacer en cuanto a la trata.
And there was one time we were driving, we were going to run errands, and I was on the phone I hung up the phone, and my son looked at me sitting in the passenger seat of the car, and he said, "Dad, what is human trafficking?"
Y una vez mi hijo estaba conmigo en el carro y después de escuchar varias llamadas, se me dio la vuelta y me dijo, papá, ¿qué es tráfico de personas?
And so I was flustered, trying to fumble through how do I explain to a 9-year-old child what human trafficking is.
Y yo pensé, ¿cómo explica a un niño de 9 años qué es tráfico de personas?
And as I did a terrible job of trying to explain it,
Y terriblemente expliqué qué era.
my son stopped me,
Me paró mi hijo
and he said to me, "Dad, I think what you're trying to say is you're giving a voice to those that don't have one in that moment." And I have to say, no truer words have rung with me and carried me through the fight to end human trafficking. And I hope that all of you will join us in this fight to end human trafficking and help give a voice to those that need it most. Thank you for your time.
Don't leave. 1 second. Bill, I just want to ask you if you have any very specific recommendations for them, any actions that they can take, they can walk away from this room and they can actually do. I know that you write like comprehensive legislation for states. You've already got that written for each state if they want to download it. But what can they do today?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really key point, right? What we need is advocates. We need advocates at the federal level, but also what makes the United States unique is we've got to have advocates fighting for legislation at the state level as well.
But don't you you've told me you have legislation for
Yeah.
California that I can bring to California and it would make California whole on its legislative response to trafficking. Do you have that for all the states?
So we are happy to work with anyone that wants to advocate for and carry legislation forward in their states. Please feel free to reach out. Love to have a conversation. But we really need, we talked about those 3 Ps. We have to make sure that we have comprehensive approaches. You can't just do one part of the solution because then the other parts are unaffected.
Where will they reach you?
I'm happy to give you all my contact information and just reach out anytime. So I'll leave some business cards here. I do have to run. I apologize. So side note, I know Tanya was talking about running for House of Delegates in Virginia. I was coerced into running for state Senate. And so I have to get back and do some campaigning. But I'm happy to reach out and work with any of you all on these issues at the state level. Yeah, we definitely need to get elected. Yeah. Anyone wants help with that? Yeah, we'll take that.
Bill,
Yes.
the question is, how does it support your campaign?
I will leave my card, and please reach out. We, of course, need, look, I wouldn't be a politician if I didn't ask for money. So we certainly need donations to help support the campaign. But I think really advocating. So similar to Tanya, a big piece of my platform is running on human trafficking, fighting crime, protecting the most vulnerable in our communities, because we're not doing enough. And that's on either side, right? That's a bipartisan issue that we're just not doing enough to protect the most vulnerable in our communities. And so helping to elevate that voice, share what we're doing is really important.
Your website?
My website is Wolf with 2 O's, WOOLF, the number 4, VA.com.
Wolf for Virginia. Nice. Thank you so much for.
Un breve resumen. Mi hijo me dijo a mí, ¿qué es trata?
Oh.
Tú das voz a los que no tienen voz. Ese es un gran ejemplo. Y ahora él tiene legislación para todos los estados de Estados Unidos de leyes que todos podemos ser. Todos podemos hacer incidencia, todos podemos participar. También es candidato para el Congreso de Virginia. Si viviéramos aquí, ¿cuántos votáramos por él? We would all vote for you, okay? If we were here. Thank you.
Thank you.